Welcome. I am so genuinely glad you're here today. Have you ever felt, well, just stuck? Like you're playing out the exact same patterns over and over again, quietly wishing you could finally step into a completely new version of yourself. In this explainer, we're exploring a deeply personal and honestly, a highly misunderstood journey, which is reinventing yourself from the inside out. We're going to look at the actual psychology and the neuroscience behind becoming who you are truly meant to be. So get comfortable, take a deep breath, and let's explore together how real, lasting transformation actually happens.
Just think about how often we carry the heavy, honestly exhausting baggage of our past narratives right into our present. Psychologist Sohan Nair suggests that reinvention really begins when we stop and question the story we're telling about ourselves. Instead of asking that familiar, heavy question, who have I always been? What happens when you gently shift your focus, take a breath, and instead ask, who am I becoming? It's a small shift, but it opens up this beautiful space of possibility. It gives you permission to step out of the labels and the past failures that you might have been holding on to for years.
Okay, let's dive into this because this mental shift is deeply rooted in how we view our own potential. You might already know about psychologist Carol Dweck, who identified two main ways we think about our abilities. Now, if you currently find yourself in a fixed mindset, believing your intelligence and talents are just innate and set for life, please don't judge yourself for that. It's so common, and it creates this very real illusion of feeling permanently stuck. But when we shift to a scientifically verified growth mindset, you understand that your abilities can actually be developed over time through effort and strategy. A growth mindset views not knowing something as just a temporary state, not some kind of permanent flaw. And stepping into that growth mindset is absolutely essential. Because starting over, it's a process. It has a specific psychological arc as outlined by ReachLink. It starts with the ending. And I really want to validate this for you. Grieving and releasing who you were is a completely necessary psychological phase. Just take a moment to accept that. You literally can't start something new without letting go of the old. Then you enter the neutral zone, which honestly can feel a bit disorienting as you process the transition. And finally, you reach the new beginning. This is an emergence that happens naturally as you integrate what you've learned. It can't be forced, and it definitely can't be put on a rigid schedule. Now, if you ever worry that you're just too set in your ways, or maybe you think you're too old for this process, I want to share something truly amazing about your biology. The idea that our brains just stop developing after early adulthood, it's a complete myth. Enter neuroplasticity. This is your brain's biological ability to continuously change, reorganize, and rewire its neural connections through growth and experience. Transformation is physically guaranteed to be possible at literally any age, simply because your adult brain never stops developing. Every single time you learn a new skill or change a habit, your brain is literally rewiring itself. How cool is that? And this brilliantly illustrates what happens in our minds when we actually embrace growth. Neuroimaging has shown that a growth mindset literally activates specific brain regions. So the anterior cingulate cortex, which is involved in learning and control, and the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which monitors our errors and helps adapt our behavior, they both light right up. People with a growth mindset literally have brains that are highly active when they receive information on how to improve. They're entirely focused on the beautiful process of learning, rather than being paralyzed by this need for perfection or fixed results.
But if our brains are so perfectly built for change, why do we so often feel like we're failing at it? Well, Dr. Bruce Parsons explains that it really comes down to something called identity level transformation. See, most of us try to change our surface level behaviors with sheer willpower alone. We try to force ourselves to just be more consistent or stay positive. But if your subconscious core identity still says something like, I am an anxious person, or I just don't follow through, well, your brain is going to reject the new behavior to protect your current identity. Sheer willpower, it just leads to exhausting burnout.
So if willpower doesn't work, what actually does? Well, we have to rewire the subconscious so it feels safe in your new identity. Dr. Parsons uses a framework called subconscious recalibration integration, or SRI. It starts with a subconscious safety reset, which uses breath and body work to create a physical sense of safety around a completely new way of being. Next is future self-integration. This is where you visualize and emotionally experience the version of you who already lives out this new identity. Finally, we have emotional repatterning rituals, which basically anchor these intentions in the body through repetition. It literally rewires you from the inside out. Let's move to the next step and see how this builds. Another incredibly powerful, practical way to protect and solidify this new version of yourself is through what behavioral designer Nir Eyal calls an identity pact. This is where you gently pre-commit to your new self-image. So for example, you might declare yourself to be indistractable.
By aligning your daily choices with who you want to be, you create this amazing cognitive shortcut. If you are indistractable, then refusing to check your phone during dinner with a friend isn't some agonizing choice you have to make. It's just what an indistractable person naturally does. And sharing this identity with others, that builds gentle, loving accountability.
Now, what's really interesting here is how this completely changes our approach to daily progress. Author James Clear points out a critical distinction between goals and systems. Think about it. Goals are just the results you want to achieve. But systems are the processes that actually lead to those results. As he so profoundly puts it, you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. If you're having trouble changing your habits, I promise you, the problem isn't you. The problem is simply your system.
So how do we actually build these effective systems? We do it through the neurological feedback loop that physically creates them over time, which is known as the habit loop. It consists of a cue, which triggers a craving, which motivates a response, and finally provides a reward. That reward satisfies the craving and ultimately becomes permanently associated with the cue. Understanding this loop allows us to translate our new inner identity into outward atomic habits. You basically just make good cues obvious, make the cravings attractive, make the responses easy, and make the rewards satisfying. You literally have the blueprint right here. As James Clear writes, every action is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. I want you to just let that sink in for a moment. Meaningful change does not require radical, exhausting leaps. You really don't have to overhaul your entire life in a single day. All it takes is tiny, daily votes of confidence in your new identity. No single instance magically transforms your beliefs, but as those small votes build up over time, so does the undeniable, concrete evidence of who you are becoming.
And the math behind these tiny votes is incredibly beautiful. If you can get just 1% better every day for a year, you don't just end up a little bit better. Because of compounding, you actually end up 37 times better than when you started. That is huge. It doesn't matter how successful or unsuccessful you might feel right now. What matters is simply whether your tiny daily habits are putting you on the right path.
And we see everyday people applying this to completely reinvent themselves all the time. Psychology Today highlighted several truly inspiring stories. There's Wookie, who went from being a completely depleted corporate lawyer to an energized interpersonal communication coach. It's just amazing. Then there's Robert, a weight loss physician who started running simply to be a better role model, and he eventually became an Ironman triathlete. And Steve left an incredibly frustrating corporate software programming job to become a wilderness backpacking guide. They didn't make magical, overnight leaps. They just aligned their daily actions with their true core values.
So the absolutely crucial point here is this. While we strive for all this wonderful growth, there is a foundational anchor to this entire journey. And that anchor is radical self-acceptance. You have to realize that you do not have to hate your current self in order to build a better future one. In fact, lasting change is almost impossible if it's fueled by self-rejection. A lack of self-worth really only fuels an economy that profits off our sense of inadequacy, which just leads us to overcompensate and eventually, inevitably, burn out.
To truly transform, we absolutely have to cultivate our inherent self-worth. This means taking the time to quietly reflect and identify your actual true needs and your boundaries. It means looking at the aspects of your identity you might have previously rejected and finding a beautiful way to appreciate them as part of your unique human experience. You have to release this exhausting pursuit of a false sense of adequacy. When you actually practice self-acceptance, you realize you never had to be different to be enough. You are worthy exactly as you are, right in this very moment. And that brings us right back to where we started. Your journey of reinvention isn't an escape from who you were. It's a beautiful evolution into who you are truly meant to be. As Sohan Nair reminds us, your past may explain who you were. It doesn't have to decide who you become. Think about the tiny 1% vote you can cast today for the person you want to be tomorrow. The pathways in your brain are open, and they are waiting. So who are you becoming?